was kind of buy the rumor, and potentially we sell in the news when reality sets in of what we're going to see on the other side. I think with people being home and being quarantined, it's been difficult to understand what the cumulative effect of everything's going to be. We really don't know how companies are going to rehire those that they've furloughed or laid off. We really don't know what small business and medium-sized businesses are going to be able to afford to do in the next couple of weeks, and how long how far the stimulus will take them. We really don't know what the impact of all the forbearance on mortgages and rents and tax payments is going to have on, institutions and municipalities, states, and all levels of government. And so I think because people are naturally optimistic right now in terms of the market, I just don't think they're really factoring in what we're going to see on the other side.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're not convinced, and you don't see to the other side yet. But given the fact that markets, stocks sold off so heavily, Mark, have you been buying anyway?
I bought early on, and and I sold a lot of volatility where I could, and so now that the VIX has receded some, I've been buying back some of those calls and puts that I bought, and I haven't bought anything in 2 weeks. And so I'm just waiting and seeing. I actually, I sold munis. I was in a lot of cash, and I'm trying to get more cash. If I'm wrong and the market keeps on going up, my core holdings, Netflix and Amazon, are going to continue to do well. And if unfortunately things turn back and we retest lows, then I'll be in a position to do something.
Did you top up of any of those core holdings, 10% lower or so than we are at the moment, Mark?
No, I didn't. I just kept where I was. I haven't added or subtracted.
You clearly, Mark, have great exposure to the underlying economy, small businesses in particular. We've been discussing today about the small business lending program. How crucial is it that program continues to improve in terms of actually working and getting money out of the door from banks to small businesses? Is that a key swing factor for the economy as we look ahead?
Yeah, it's critical. I can't tell you how many small businesses I've spoken to, whether it's my Shark Tank companies or people that I don't even know emailing me, wondering what they should do. And everybody's really hopeful that the PPP loans will come through and do the job to allow them to either rehire or retain the employees they still have. But because it's been so slow, people are still uncertain. Now, that said, I'm optimistic that the banks will come through and they'll iron out the kinks, and within the next week we'll see that, and within the next 3 weeks we'll see the $1,200 payments. So I think those will be positives, but I still don't know what it's going to look like beyond those, right? So while it'll buy us time for hopefully the scientists to do what they do, I still don't know what society is going to look like on the other side. And to me, that's why I see uncertainty in the markets. But, that's just long-term I'm hopeful, short-term I'm uncertain.
What's your sense, Mark, of how many small businesses will be able to survive, whether they tap the loans or not?
I'd say without the loans, it'd be 50%. With the loans, and again, I'm just speculating, 75%. But I think more than survival rate, I think the bigger question is going to be retention of employee rates, because I think we're in this time of quarantine and doing business from home and transacting business differently. It's not even about learning new habits. We're learning what we need and what we don't need. We may not have needed as many employees. We're finding out that, we can do things differently than we did them before. And so businesses are going to go through their own personal resets and try to reevaluate what's a necessity for them going forward. And consumers and employees will do the same thing. What type of job do they want to work? What's important to them? How much money do they need to save? How conservative are they going to be because they're afraid the virus may reemerge? And so we're going to go through a whole reset of not just businesses, but how we hire, where people want to work, what type of jobs they want, how they save, all these things again and again and again. And so, again, long-term, very hopeful, and I'm always going to bet on the United States of America, but short-term, just very uncertain.
Mark, always going to bet on the United States of America, but do you ever wonder whether the current shape of capitalism is under threat? I mean, the bailout in response to the last crisis very much benefited the haves as opposed to the have-nots, QE in particular, inflating asset prices for people that already owned those assets. And it was fairly recent in our memories, only 12 years ago. In a couple of years' time, even if the bailouts this time are successful, Do you think that we're going to see a big reaction politically the next time we get to an election after the current one?
I think it's the opposite. I think capitalism is going to become a lot smarter and a lot more compassionate because of what we're going through. I think everybody felt the risk of what was happening politically and the threats and seeing the same surveys about Gen Z and millennials, liking socialism as much as they like capitalism. And I think any smart CEO recognizes that that was a threat, and they're going to have to deal with their employees much differently going forward than they did in the past. I think they also recognize, even in 2008, 2009, we weren't in a social media universe. It was still relatively young. Now with social media, all consumers are brands. Everybody defines themselves in one way or the other, and they post that on social media in one way or the other. And so how companies deal with their employees, how they deal with their consumers, that's all going to impact how people buy and what products and services they connect themselves with. And so I think in a really perverse way, this was good for capitalism because companies are realizing they're going to have to be smarter and can't just, it can't just be about shareholders. In fact, you have to put employees ahead of shareholders. And I think shareholders, people buying stocks, are going to realize, that ESG stuff is critically important. Maybe I'll give company A, B, or C a higher PE ratio when I buy the stock as a reflection of the fact that they understand the longer term. And it's not just about this quarter or this year.
So Mark, I wonder if the calendar was a little different and we were a year away from an election as opposed to in an election year, given that today, of course, Bernie Sanders pulled out of the race. Do you think he may well have been the nominee in a slightly different calendar configuration? I
have no idea. I have a hard enough time handicapping the market, let alone politics. I don't know.
Yeah, but you told Axios, I think last week, everything's a reset now. Yep. You didn't rule it out. I'll keep an open mind, but I seriously doubt it as for running for president.
Talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking about you. Yeah. Is that still is that still something you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, look, it'd have to be a very, very unique set of circumstances. But I do think we need somebody who can bridge the things that Wilford was talking about, what Bernie was looking for in terms of placing employees and workers first, and what, traditional capitalism was putting profits first. There's got to be a bridge there, and we'll see, how the current candidates
handle that. Is Joe Biden not the person for you?
I like Joe, right? I mean, all things being equal, I think he'd be my choice right now. But at the same time, we have to see how far left he was polled and what all his positions are going to be. It's not November, so lots of things can change, and there's no reason to jump to a conclusion now.
Mark, I want to ask you about Boeing, just because it's perhaps the easiest example to play devil's advocate with in terms of what a shape of a bailout should be. They've come out and said that if they are to take government money, they don't think the government should take an equity stake. Clearly, they've had all sorts of their own problems in the last couple of years that has contributed to some of the pressures they're feeling. What's your response when you see their leadership say that they don't deserve to see the government take an equity stake?
If I was sitting in the negotiating table with them, I'd say bye, see ya. Right? If you can, they also said that they can get money elsewhere. And I'd say, look, I'm negotiating for the American taxpayer. And in any private equity deal, look, we'll use a template. We'll use what Warren Buffett did with Bank of America when he gave them $5 billion and asked for warrants. And he made $12 billion off the warrants. That's the exact same type of deal that I would cut. Because when you're sitting at that table with Boeing, it's not, okay, we recognize you didn't have anything to do with the virus and it's not your fault. But guess what? It's not the American taxpayer's fault either. And so if I'm negotiating for the taxpayer, I'm asking for everything plus the kitchen sink. And if they think they can get a better deal from PE, more power to them. Go. Don't waste our time.
Mark, I have to ask you about the NBA. That was such a sort of pivotal turning point when the NBA suspended its season. Yeah. As the world faces these tough questions about what it's going to look like and how we can reopen, what do you think has to happen for the NBA to come back?
Safety. We have to have certainty that our players, our staffs, our essential personnel, and if and when we get to having fans at the games, they're all safe. And it's not something where you listen to the politicians and what they suggest. It's all going to be driven by science. When the scientists and the doctors give us the all clear, then we go, and I'm not going to guess on the date or when that may happen or how that may happen. But just as an employer myself, whether it's the Mavericks or any company, I'm not letting my employees walk through the front door because I can't imagine putting them at risk and potentially creating, we've seen what's happened at nursing homes where people in close contact, certain people have the virus, and then it just becomes incredibly contagious. I don't want to see that happen in any of my offices, and I certainly wouldn't want to see that happen at a game. And so it's going to be safety first, no ifs, ands, or buts. And when that happens, then I think it'll be a great moment because, we need sports. We need sports badly right now. We need something to cheer for, something to get excited about, something to be communal about. And, when the time comes and everything's safe, I'm sure we'll do it.
What about the fans? I mean, sold out arenas, Mark. Can you see that happening before we get a vaccine in this country, which could be another year away?
No. I mean, I don't know if it has to be a vaccine that really creates confidence, but there's got to be some way of making everybody know that they're safe, not think that they're safe, not convincing them they're safe, but knowing that they're safe. Whether or not there's sprays, whether or not there's sterilization techniques, whatever it may be that the scientists tell us allows people to get back together in large groups, that's what it's going to take. And, I can tell you at our arena and other arenas and talking to different people in similar circumstances, that's the focus of everything we're doing. What is it that we can do that can kill this thing on surfaces and allow it to not come back and not put people at risk if they're, within arm's length or if they're on an escalator, in an elevator. So those are the things that we're focusing on now. And that's something every business should focus on. When you guys go back to headquarters, that first time you walk into that meeting room and you have 10 people there, no one's going to want to be the first one in the door. And so all companies are going to have to build some level of certainty that people aren't going to be at risk when they congregate.
Mark, just quickly to run things off, I know you've said already that you guys didn't have pandemic insurance for the Mavs, but Darren Ravel, a business sports reporter, just tweeted an hour or so ago that Wimbledon reportedly paid $2 million a year for pandemic insurance. They pay out $141 million. What do you make of that? Were you close to getting pandemic? Did you consider it?
No, I wasn't. No, they're a lot smarter than I am. That's what I make of that. In hindsight, there was always a probability of greater than zero and much greater than zero at some level that this could happen, and I wasn't smart enough to do it. I wish I was.
Well, you've made lots of other good calls, Mark, so fear not. But Mark Cuban, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for calling in.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. Stay safe.